Hello everyone and welcome back to another great matchup from the FIDE World Cup 2023. Sorry about this, let me just rewind that. It is Arjun Erigaisi versus Praggnanandhaa, and Arjun defeated Praggnanandhaa with the black pieces yesterday. So now if Pragg wants the force tiebreaks, he's going to have to do the same. It's not going to be easy, as Arjun will make his, well, at least try to make his life miserable, even though they are great friends, and he will opt for the same thing Magnus went for against Ootes, the Alapin Sicilian, where white simply doesn't lose. So let's check it out. Arjun has the white pieces and he opens with e4. Pragg goes for c5. He wants a fighting chance, and of course Arjun wants to minimize the threat as much as possible, so he plays pawn to c3, the Alapin variation of the Sicilian. And Ootes played d5 against Magnus and he didn't get all that much. Pragg tries knight to f6 here against Arjun. We have pawn to e5, knight to d5, and now knight to f3. d4 is a bit more popular, but knight to f3, the second most popular option. Knight to c6, d4, we have captures, and pawn to d6. So all been played before, very standard stuff here. Bishop c4, knight to b6, and now bishop to b5, pinning the knight here. So bishop to d7, and now knight to c3. We have captures on e5, captures, and pawn to g6. We have castles, and the bishop to g7, putting pressure on the pawn here. So of course Arjun defends it with queen to e2, and now the queen and knight nicely defend the e5 pawn, and here we have castles. You could also consider some other moves like maybe queen to c7, maybe a6, but it's best to castle first. We have h3, and now there are some games that reach this position where queen to c7 and a6 were played, but here we have bishop to e6, and it is now as of move 13 that we have a completely new game. So did Pragg get a playable position here with black? Let's go forward a few more moves and see what happens. Rook to d1. Of course, an excellent square for the rook. Attacks the queen, queen to c7, and the bishop to f4. You have to defend your e5 pawn. Rook 8 to d8, and now rook 8 to c1. Nicely aligning the rook with the queen here, and now knight to d5. Offering some trades here, and Arjun goes for it. Knight captures on d5, bishop captures, and now knight to d4. We have queen to b6 by Pragg, and here Arjun devises a devious plan where he will sacrifice a pawn, but he will get incredible counterplay, and he will be the one seemingly playing for the win. So he plays knight captures on c6, and okay, b captures on c6. Pragg wants to keep as many pieces on the board as possible. Bishop to c4, we have bishop captures on c4, queen captures, and now rook captures on d1 with check. Rook captures, and Pragg wins a pawn with queen captures on b2. So why did Arjun do this? Well, the trick is pawn to e6, and now he will mess up Pragg's pawn structure, and Pragg will have an isolated a pawn and isolated c pawn, and hopefully a double isolated e pawn, and that's not very good if you want to play for a win. So okay, Pragg goes back with queen to f6. It's the absolute best way to play. Bishop to e3, now preparing to capture on a7 and create a passed a pawn. So okay, Pragg says you do that, I'm gonna capture on e6 with my queen and offer a queen trade. So what does this mean? It means that Pragg will be up a pawn, but in an endgame that you are not very likely to win. So queen captures on e6, f captures on e6, and now bishop captures on a7. And okay, Pragg also has a passed c pawn, but the passed a pawn is a bit stronger here. So rook to a8, and now luckily for Arjun, not luckily, he of course calculated it all the way at that point where he first captured on c6, rook to d7, defends the bishop and goes after the e7 pawn, and now it's merely a matter of advancing the passed a pawn. Or so he hopes, at least. We have king to f7 defending the pawn, and pawn to a4. We have bishop to e5, absolute best move by Pragg. Also, you have to decide what to play if bishop to c5 lands. King to f1. Now it's time to bring the king over to help out with the attack, and now bishop to d6. We have king to e2. Now pawn to e5. We have king to d3 and king to e6. Pragg also activating his king. We have rook to b7. And now king to d5, nicely opposing the white king. We have pawn to f3 and pawn to c5 now. So Pragg is getting a lot of counterplay here, but still the passed a pawn is looking very, very dangerous. Pawn to a5. We have rook to f8, and now pawn to a6. We have rook back to a8, and now we have king to c3. pawn to g5 by Pragg, controlling the f and the h pawn, and now king back to d3. Arjun, of course, very happy with a draw here. He says, what are you going to do? Okay, Pragg plays pawn to h5. And here, in order to hold this, Arjun needs to play king to e3, but he doesn't. He played king to c3, and believe it or not, now Praggnanandhaa's position is completely winning, and well, who would expect that from an Alapin Sicilian? And it's a really weird position. You're like, okay, if you see something like this, you obviously prefer black because black is the one up a pawn. But considering the situation in the match where the black rook is completely out of the game and black needs to win the game, you just don't believe that such a thing is possible. I mean, how do you activate here? But he allows it with queen to c3, and Pragg finds it. This is move 37. They are both very low on time and need to reach time control, but Pragg makes the absolute best move, pawn to e4. F captures with check, king captures, now king to c4, and now king to f4. And now whatever you try is insufficient. Let's say you capture on c5. Well, then rook captures on a6. You no longer have your star a pawn. And if king to b5, now you play rook to a2. You simply go after the pawns here. Bishop captures on d6, e captures, now rook to f7 check. And okay, you move the king to e4, and the extra pawn is very much winning here. On the other hand, king to b5, which is what Arjun played, Pragg now plays pawn to h4. We have rook to d7, and now king to g3. And here you have to make a choice. Do you go for a race with king to c6 and king to b7, or do you try something else? Well, we have to calculate the race, because if the race works, then we go for the race. If king to c6, king captures on g2, king to b7 attacks the rook. We're going to move the rook, rook to f8, now bishop to b6. We have to block the rook's defense of the a8 square. Pawn to g4, h captures, pawn to h3, pawn to a7, and now pawn to h2. Bishop to d8 now will ensure that the a pawn becomes a queen, but of course Pragg will queen one move sooner. a8 queen, and now both players have a queen into the game. But king to g3 opens up a deadly discovery. We have king to a7, and now look at this. Rook to f3. No checks for white here. Next move, it's rook to a3, and that's pretty much it. If you try queen to b7, you still deliver rook to a3 with check. And if king to b6, now just rook to b3 check, and that's all there is. You're going to win the queen. You don't even have to win the queen. You can even checkmate to the white king if you guys want to see it. Queen f1 check, king to a7. You will play queen to a1 with check. Queen to a6, and of course bishop to b8 with check. The king has to move. You're going to win the queen. Rook to a7 only move, and queen captures on a7 will be checkmate. So that is the race, and believe it or not, these guys can calculate that out all the way to the very end, and time control has been reached. This is already move 42, so both of them have calculated this basically in an instant. We have bishop to b6, and now pawn to c4 by Pragg. And this is, again, definitely the way to go. Problem is, if you try king captures on g2, then rook to a7, and then once you move the rook, rook to d7. And now you will block the rook, and you are very, very close to queening, and this will be enough for a draw. But Pragg finds the very strong c4, which either creates a passed pawn or king captures, and then you are much further away from the action, and then black has all the time in the world to actually do something about this. So here, bishop to c7 was played. Now bishop captures, rook captures, and king captures on g2. Rook to c5, of course, going after the g5 pawn, but Pragg not about to let that happen. Rook to g8, we have pawn to a7, and now king captures on h3. King to a6, we have pawn to g4, king to b7, and pawn to g3. And here it would be bad if you just play a8 queen, because then rook captures, and then after king captures, g2 is completely winning. So he has to try something else. After g3, rook to c8 was played, but even that is not enough. Rook captures on c8, king captures, now pawn to g2, a8 queen, and now g1 queen. Both players have a queen, but Pragg is up 3 pawns. So now it's merely a matter of can Arjun perhaps find some sort of a perpetual. Maybe he can torture Pragg, maybe win one of the pawns, and then maybe somehow get a draw. Well, of course, he will try. Queen to f3 with check, queen to g3. Queen to h1 with check, we have king to g4, now queen to e4 with check. Queen to f4 blocking, now queen to e2 with check, king to h3, and now queen captures on e7. Okay, so Arjun wins one of the pawns, but now it's Pragg to move, and he will try to escort his pawn to become another queen. Pawn to c3. We have queen to e1, and now queen to f3. We have queen to c1, and of course king to h2. Queen to c2 with check. We have king to g3, and now queen back to c1. We have queen to c6 with check, king to b8, queen to d6 with check, king to c8, and now queen to c5 with check, king to b7, pawn to c2. And now a few more checks will be given, but of course both of them know that that is now it. Queen to e1 check, we have queen to f2, and now you can just give any check, like if you give this check, queen f3 blocks this, and you have to trade queens. And then black just gets a queen into the game. So queen to, sorry, not e4, queen to e5 check was played. We have king to h3, and now queen to e6 with check. King h2, we have queen to e5 with check, now queen to g3, queen to c5 stopping promotion, but now just pawn to h3. And of course, it seems like you can capture a pawn for free, even though it comes with check, you will be countered with another check, and now you are forced to trade queens, and then the pawn just becomes another queen. So after h3, king to a6 was played, but now queen to d3 with check, king to a7, and of course queen to d2. Guarding the queening square, preparing to queen, few more checks, queen e5 check, king to h1, queen to e4 check, queen to g2 now, queen to f4, guarding the queening square, but now just queen to g1 check, nicely connects with the queening square, and after king to a6, Pragg brought another queen into the game, and he was in this position on move 75 that Arjun Erigaisi resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. So Pragg does it. He does it the way that Gukesh couldn't, with the Sicilian defense against the Alapin. Really incredible stuff. So remember in the previous video where I said that in the top tier game black never wins that position. Well, it's not really true. Pragg has done it against his very good friend Arjun Erigaisi. They will settle it tomorrow. They will go into rapid tie breaks. Then if they do that, into faster rapids, then into blitz, then into faster blitz. And then once I said that they will go into Armageddon, but that's not really true for the FIDE World Cup. In the FIDE World Cup, if it's a draw after all of that, they go into sudden death. So there we have it. Very nicely done by Pragg, bouncing back. We'll see what happens, and one more game is still being played from the semifinals. We'll see when it ends. I will probably cover that as well, the one between Lennart Dominguez Perez and Fabiano Caruana. So once again, really hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank Serinivas Kashyap, Yun Yang, Mario Encinosa, Michael Shui, and David Kimura for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of this wonderful event until it finishes. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.